Yeah.
Hello, hello, hello. Recording has started, and we're gonna share our screen. Screen one, go live. Doot. Feel free to tune in. So, um, I've asked you guys to do some homework, but turns out I didn't do it myself. So, as the lazy guy I am, I went onto the marketplace and I got myself a nice little landscape. So I got a bit of a head start. It's looking pretty good, but we'll run through it later towards the end of the workshop. I've got some tips with this one. Now, before we get started, has everyone got a base landscape that we can play with today? It doesn't have to be anything fancy like the image, like perfect matching, let's say. We want to get it there eventually, but do we have sort of a baseline to work with today?
Yeah. I got one made with a height map. So it's nice.
Nice.
Yeah, June and I use Gaia, so yeah, we have terrain.
Sweet. Terrain, landscape, like we're going to use different terminologies. Feel free to using what's comfortable. Now I realized that we are going to go into some tree stuff, and I've only asked you guys to download some grass assets. Have you also got the grass assets as well together with the base landscape?
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
Yes.
Cool. So just so we can save time later, let's go and grab this tree as well that we're going to use. Does anyone already have trees in their projects? Can skip this part.
Nah.
No.
Yeah, no, not yet.
Cool. Like it. Following instructions. Perfect. Cool. I love it. So, I don't know if you should have this available, but if you go into your Unreal Engine project, if we're all here, and if we go to Window and Fab, open up Fab's nice little library, probably into the home page originally. Now I've gone ahead and downloaded it myself so I can just have the name ready to go. But if we search quick tree, it's the quickest one I could find that is a single asset and doesn't take too long to download. I'll share the name here in the chat if we need to find it properly. Quick trilt tree. If anyone knows what a trilt is, feel free to share that information. And once you find it, as usual, download and add to project. Let me know when you guys are there.
Yeah. Got it.
Wait. Is that a capital I or?
It's an L, I think.
I'll just copy this.
Copy paste the Reno. It's my favorite term.
Yes.
Copy paste the Reno. I can't remember from which streamer I got that from. Definitely in the game somewhere.
Wait, so through the in
This-
the you're able to find it?
Through Fab.
There it is. Okay.
Got it. Got it.
It is gigantic if you just put it into the Steam.
Let me know once you guys are happy.
Yes.
It's in your project.
Yes, I have it.
Should come as in the content browser as a Fab folder, and in there it should have the asset name, etc., and then all the stuff that comes with it. I should have one more extra thing in here, but we'll get to that later. Cool. So just to get that out the way, lovely jubbly. Now, I'm not sure if you guys played around with this before, but obviously foliage is one of the most, I guess, important parts to an environment, to a landscape, but also can be one of the things that hurts our GPU and our FPS the most. Which is why I wanted to emphasize last week's tutorial on anti-aliasing methods, because that will really, it didn't show as much, let's say, with the architectural stuff that we're looking at, but it will definitely show a lot more with the foliage assets that we use and the shaders that it uses to compile the shadows and stuff that is displayed on the ground. So we're gonna have a look at both of them in tangent based on last tutorials as well, last workshop as well. So if we're all in our projects, if we go into selection mode, we have different modes that we can choose from. 2 is landscape. We've done that in last time's workshops. We're gonna go on shift 3, which is foliage. Now, if this is the first time you're using it, it should be completely empty, and it should allow you to drag and drop your foliage in here. Now you can hit the nice plus green icon over there, or we can go into our plant pack, which is OWD plant pack, go into our plants folder, go into meshes, and in here we have all our static meshes basically. Now the beauty of it, we can pick and choose which ones we want to use from the editor here, but if we want to use all of them, we can just Control Shift select all of them and drag and drop them in there. Or let's say if I want to focus on a few, so let's say I'll pick SM Plants 1, SM Plant 2, 1, SM Plants 3, 3, let's say, a couple random ones. I like some ferns. We have a lot of ferns in Cyprus. SM Plants 9, 1. Again, feel free to choose which ones look satisfying to you. And once I have a selection, I'll click and drag and drop them into the foliage types. Now, once they're in here, if I hover over them, you can see there's a checkbox enabled. If these is obviously which ones we are using. So if we want to paint and we don't want to use these two and we only want to use the first two, we can just deselect them. But if we want to paint with all of them, we just have all of them enabled, and it'll create a nice little cluster of plants all at once, which is nice and easy. Just going to bring that down a bit so you can see what we do. So once we have a couple of plants in there selected, we can, simple as that, just quickly start painting. Just make sure that up in the foliage selection tools, you have paint selection foliage. You obviously have a brush size, by default is 512, but I can increase that to 8,200 almost, and it will cover a nice big area. If your landscape is pretty big and you want to navigate faster, you can just go in the top right hand corner into camera speed and change the camera speed multiplier, or you can just, by hotkeys, is control and mouse scroll forwards and back, I think. Ooh, no, not with landscape tool enable. Ooh, I have to be out of landscape. Ooh, that's a handy little trick. Alright, control mouse scroll enables and disables your brush size. Doesn't allow you to change it once you're in this mode, different hotkeys. Good learning tip. Cool. So just like that, I'll bring it in and I can start painting all around. Whee. Now you can see immediately we painted about 23,000 of each plant, which is an insane amount. My FPS is starting to drop substantially, so you want to be mindful of that. Now, one way we can control some of these assets is not only the brush size and the brush density of the tools we have, but each individual asset, if we click on it, we have a bunch of properties. Just enlarge this a little bit here. Now we can treat each of these assets individually. The most important things that we'll focus on is the density. So this is, as it says, how many instances it will apply over a specific area. Radius, I guess you can look into. Scale is obviously if you want to have more variant scale. This is more apparent with, let's say, if you're painting trees, if you ever want to do that. I'm not sure why it's a scale X. It's more of a uniform scale. So we can set a min and max to create a bit more variation. Now we can see here they're all a bit uniform. And last but not least, I mean, feel free to dig into these. You can play around with like the angle of slope. If let's say your hill is over 45 degrees, it won't apply foliage to that section. If you put 90 degrees, it can apply it to a 90-degree angle, let's say. And most importantly, what we're going to look at for performance is the cull distance. Now, this is super important. This is how much we can see into how much of our foliage we can see. Now, cull distance will work a lot with your LOD system. The two and two work in parallel. I'm going to play around with this a little bit just to see if I increase the value, what will happen. You going to see any culling effect? I guess we need to set it up with the LODs properly with these types of plants. But yeah, this should start to decrease the peripheral once you see them, but maybe this will adjust once we play around with the optimization settings, which we're going to look at next. So we'll wait a bit on that one. More tools that we can look into for painting the foliage. If obviously you want to remove, it's the same process, erase, not just remove. You can select a whole section and remove it. I believe if I select this plant specifically, does it let me? Oh, it's one by one. It's one by one, that one. But I can just select that one and hit erase, and it will only erase that specific plant that I don't want to be in there. If I start to enable, it will start to erase all of them together. So feel free to play around with some of these tools. We won't deep dive much into it. It's pretty self-explanatory, to be honest. Single one, if you're getting to a point where you're painting really close to some water, let's say, and you don't want the plants to intersect with the water, you can start to place single ones all around the perimeter. Or if you're doing some archivist stuff and you want to place some just in the background, some single ones without painting the density, you can do that as well. Coolio, any questions till now? Lovely.
No, good.
Cool.
No, it's very simple so far.
Now it starts to become a little bit more complex when you have to. We've brought in a lot of these assets from asset packs. This is why I recommend it a lot, because it's a little bit more complex to set up from scratch. Now you can, like we just downloaded this tree asset. We're gonna set it up ourselves as a foliage type, but feel free to. I'll show you next actually how you can dig into it a little bit more if you want later on. Coolio. Okay, so because we've created that, we've now got this instant foliage actor, which is good that it creates that on top of our landscape, because we can enable it and disable it just to save on performance if we're working on some other stuff as well. But it is parented and linked to the landscape and the height of the landscape, which is pretty good. Okay, static mesh plant properties. Now, LODs. Not sure if we've done a bit of that in the previous workshops, but let's say if we open up one of the plant assets in here. Now, this is all set up for us, which is great, but if you're creating your own static meshes and your own LOD system, it's slightly more advanced. I would recommend having a look at some more tutorials about that. I'm happy to share some if you need more guidance, but typically how it works is at a certain distance you would define a lower number of triangles and vertices for that specific plant so that it renders less in the distance, because we're not going to see it in its highest fidelity. So the closer we are to the object, the higher the detail. The further we are away from the object, the lower the detail. And that's usually done in your third-party proprietary software, as in you build the meshes with the different triangles, you embed it together, and then you export it as one asset into a software like Unreal or Unity. And within here, we have for each mesh our LOD properties. Now we can see here under the LOD picker, we have it set to auto, and we can see here we have 3 LODs for this specific plant. You can have, I believe the standard is about 6 or 7, but you can have up to as many as you want to. I don't think you would need more than that, depending on how detailed your scene is. But these are super handy for open world games like PUBG, all this stuff where you have huge environments, but obviously you don't need to render the whole environment at the same time. You only need to render, let's say, 1 or 2 kilometers from the viewer. The rest is pretty much blurred, or how we're going to play with it is with a bit of fog, stuff like that. Now, if we, for whatever reason, I would say proceed with caution, you want to change the number of LODs that are streamed, you would do that here in the LOD settings. So let's say if you want to do something with an ArchViz render and you wanted to pull really back, let's say our image that we chose, do I have it here in the downloads somewhere? You can see in this image, they're pretty clear. Obviously, they're hidden by a bit of fog, but still a bit clear. Now, for this image, let's say we would want to reduce our LOD streamed, or we would want to increase the distance of that streaming LOD by adjusting the culling effect so that they don't get clipped from our camera. So if our camera is way far back, but we still want to see them and their formation, then we would change either the cull distance or the number of LODs streamed. In this instance, because we have a highly dense image, I would suggest we affect the cull distance rather than affecting the LOD stream, because it will constantly load it into our level in real time, and that won't help us when we want to work with other assets into our scene. Obviously, we could turn it on and off when needed, but if you want to work with it all in parallel, it would be good to play around with the culling rather than the LODs. So bear that in mind. If we set the LOD number here to -1, it will use the auto function that's here. So it will use what we determine in our game or in the editor. If we want to use a specific, up to a specific type, we will change this number to 0, 1, or 2. Or if you want to reduce the number of streaming loads, we can just decrease for that from 3 to 2 to 1. Bear in mind, any changes you make here, you have to hit apply. Also, quick trick, if any assets you bring into Unreal, you can obviously manipulate, but I would suggest making a copy of the asset first. So in your content browser, duplicate it and then make some changes to it. And what you can do here, let's say if this asset now is, the triangle count is way too high, you have some reduction settings here. So I can decrease that to 50%, hit apply, and now we've got 200 triangles, but you can see now the mesh is more broken down. If I, let's say, do 15%, you can see it start to look very blocky. So essentially, this is how the LOD system works with this percentage. At LOD 3, which is the furthest, LOD 2, which is the furthest, it will display 15%. At LOD 2, it will LOD 1, it will say 50%, and at the closest, it will display 100%. So that's optimization for the static meshes. Again, if you're working with high detailed environments, I suggest you play around with these. If you want your PC just to perform smoothly for renders, doesn't really matter. It's more if you're building game and performance stuff. Just bear in mind where those settings are. Coolio. Now, more optimization. We have the meshes, but then we also have their textures. Now these plants obviously look very high detailed in their textures as well, and that's another optimization. I guess we can apply optimization to that as well. Now, by default, Unreal, most of these assets we get from Megascans are 4K or 8K. I think it depends what settings you export them at, but usually they come into the project as 4K. How we can see that straight away is if we go into our plants and textures folder. If we hover over our base color, let's say of one of them, we can see here where it says dimensions under sRGB, and it says 248 times 4096. Obviously, for building mobile games, PC games, these numbers will vary. If we wanted to change them, we can go either individually or we can bulk edit them. Now, this is a very handy tool for textures. It's slowly gonna come into Unreal's new versions for static meshes as well. But bear in mind, this is a very cool technique if you want to, a trick if you want to adjust multiple textures at the same time. For this particular stuff, we don't really care about the normal texture size. It doesn't really cause as much performance as the base color. So what we're going to do is we're going to highlight a couple of the base color ones. Excuse me. Let's say 3 or 4, just to show you what this does. If we right click and go to Asset Actions, we have here Edit Selection in Property Matrix. If we click that, it's going to bring all those textures in one viewer, and it's going to give us all their properties that we can adjust. So if we adjust it here, it adjusts it for all of them. What we're looking at the moment is, let's say, max texture size. So 0 will mean the default we imported, but let's say we want to change these from 2046 to 2048 to 1024. We can go here. Oh, sorry, don't know if we need to shift select all of them. I don't think so. Let's say we shift select all of them. Toggle column. Max texture size, we can see it here. And I'll just change it to 1024. And all of them are adjusted to 1024. And here we have a little icon that says these textures need to be saved. Bear in mind, try not to do this with 100 textures at once. It will most likely crash. I'm not sure what the threshold is, but try and keep it reasonable, especially if you're dealing with larger sizes, if you're increasing them again after you've decreased them. So now if we save that and close that down and we hover over, has it applied? It hasn't shown us there. I'll open it up. "1024 displayed," imported and displayed. I guess what's shown into the content browser, it's what's imported. That's a good handy to know. What you see here in dimensions is what's imported, and our actual display size is, if we open it up, we can see it right there. Now, obviously, this will reduce a lot in size and in memory, and therefore we can then maybe use more plants. So use this technique in parallel with the LODs. Sometimes you can get away with reduced textures for high performance, maybe less plants. Think about how you want to use these two settings together. But obviously they go hand in hand. It wouldn't make sense to have a mesh with 100 triangles as a plant and it has 4K textures. Try and play with that LOD so that it matches that sort of displayed size with the LOD system, if that makes sense. Now, for textures, if we want no it here? Yeah. If we want no compression whatsoever, if you go under the texture, under the level of detail, MIP gen settings, and we set it to no MIP maps, that will also remove any LODs that have been applied to it. So it's basically changes method to now not streaming. This will definitely increase in memory size for your game, but obviously if you're building something that's very high detailed, you can play around with that setting, and feel free to explore what these other settings do as well. I use this a lot with user interfaces. Sometimes you can add a bit of blur to your textures if you're trying to hide something, but obviously sharpen 0 to sharpen 10 just plays around with the quality of the image as well. So feel free to explore some of these MIP gen settings as well. I'm going to set it back to default from texture group, and now it's streamed. Cool. What's next? Matrix group editor. Again, play around with that. Remember that it only works with textures at the moment, but if you want to edit bulk textures, it's right click, asset action, edit selection in property matrix. I believe you also have a window somewhere, property matrix. No. No, I'm mistaken, something else. Cool, so let's move on to trees. Now, I said I was going to do a bit of procedural stuff later on in the workshops, but I watched some videos and I thought it just makes sense to bring it in a bit earlier on. We're going to look at the basic level now without blueprints, but we're going to deep dive more into that in some other workshops later on, as Milo requested.
I'm sorry, can I ask you a quick question?
Of course.
So you reduced the texture size of the base color, and you said you do not need to do that for the normals?
Yes.
So it won't mess up anything?
No, the normals don't. They don't really take that much memory. If you reduce them, you don't really see much of an impact, but you can. If you want to keep it all consistent, feel free to do that as well. It doesn't really change much for the normals.
Okay, thank you.
You can see here they even have a sharpening for the normals as well, different filter. This is all interesting stuff to explore as well. Different assets that you import will have different settings as well, so definitely before you use a lot of them in your environments, definitely break them down and see what's happening behind the scenes. Trees. Okay, so if we go back to our oh no, we don't need to go foliage, we're doing procedural. Cool, forgot about that. For some reason Unreal have, don't forget to save by the way in case something goes wrong, Unreal have hidden some of this procedural generation stuff. I'm not sure why, but we're gonna go ahead and bring it up into our editor. So if you go to edit, editor preferences, and search procedural, PROSCE, you can see the first one that comes up under foliage is procedural foliage. We're going to go ahead and enable that, and now it's going to give us access to procedural foliage assets and stuff in Unreal. Weehee! Not sure why that's required, but hey, we managed to find the magic checkbox. Have we all found that? We're all happy there?
Yes.
Yes.
As you
Okay.
as you said to save, Unreal crashed.
Yay!
Oh, no.
After your foliage painting, or you saved before that?
Yeah, paint 20,000 leaves. Unreal
I
Design. die.
I think I did save after the foliage, but there's a chance it's gone. But it's okay. I mean, like it's easy enough to get back into it. So it's okay. Continue. I'm paying attention.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. That's why I love the good old autosave. Cool. You can increase the time or decrease the time it autosaves. You can set that to like 30 seconds. Just autosaves all the time. So trees. Now we won't paint trees, although we can do it in the same method we did our grass types on the floor. This time we won't paint it. We're gonna try a different technique. Now bear with me because this is also the first time I've enabled this checkbox and looking into it. So we'll go through this journey together. In our fab folder where we brought in our tree, we'll go into that folder. I'll delete that because we're already gonna create it now. And if we right click into the content browser somewhere in this folder and go to foliage, we will create a static mesh foliage actor. You can call it quick tree. Oh, you're
Sorry.
right. It is tree it.
Well,
Go on.
what was the setting that you toggled? It was in project settings, right? Procedural or something?
No. If you go to editor preferences,
Ah,
search procedural, and it should be the first one that comes up under foliage. Oui.
perfect. Yeah.
Lovely jubbly. So you can name that static mesh foliage actor. Sorry, you follow the next step, dude? You good with that? Right click, foliage, static mesh foliage actor, and name that following the name of the tree. You're right, it is quick tree it is not quick tree LT. It was a misspelling mistake. Cool. Now if we double click that static mesh foliage actor, we can see here straight away it's asking us for a static mesh. Now I'm just going to minimize this so I can drag and drop my tree directly into this first placeholder up here. Now if you pay attention to these settings, these are all the settings we had available when we enabled foliage mode. So we can change the density, I believe, density fall off, the collision, the heights, the ground slope, and all that stuff. So it's pretty handy to have this prepared because we're going to use this next. We're going to save that and close it down for now. We can play around with it later. And now the next thing we're going to do is right click again into the content browser. This time we're going to go into foliage and we're going to go for procedural foliage spawner. Now if we didn't enable the editor preference stuff, this is not available. So bear that in mind. We're going to name that tree underscore spawner, let's say. And we're going to fire that up. Now in here we have different types of foliage types. Now if we just had the static mesh, it wouldn't allow us to bring it into this array of procedural foliage. It requires a type of static mesh foliage actor. So that step was quite important. Now if we plus icon for foliage type object, we can drag and drop our asset we just created, quick tree it, static mesh foliage actor. Now obviously if you are doing procedural for let's say 10 different types of trees, you would add lots of arrays here and you would add all your actors in there as well. These numbers we won't get really into right now, but I guess it's all to do with the blocking volume that we're going to create right now, how many times it's going to spawn it. I guess this works in parallel with our static mesh foliage actor that we just created. So we're going to save that as well. Don't forget to save. and we're just gonna leave this open to the side somewhere. Bring it here, and I'm gonna drag and drop that now into the scene. Now, as you can see, it spawned a nice little cube box, but because it's small and our tree is pretty big, it hasn't spawned anything yet. What we're gonna have to do is press R to scale, and we're gonna increase the size of this box. No, we don't need that much height, let's say. And we can place it anywhere within our landscape, preferably intersecting through the floor so that it knows where to pick it up, where the ground level is. I believe if you have it hovered over, we can play with it. It might spawn the trees at a higher distance, higher height, let's say. And I believe next in the tree spawner, procedural foliage, once we have that selected, if we scroll down, we should have under procedural foliage, we should have this resimulate button. Now, any changes we make to our assets in here, or the size or anything, if we add new foliage types, we'll have to hit resimulate. So bear that in mind. Now I've hit resimulate, and we have a ton of trees. Jeez, humongous. So because we haven't defined the numbers that will spawn, because it was customized that we just imported and created, it obviously will create as many as it thinks based on the collision. Looks pretty cool. I'm assuming you've all got this now as well.
Yeah, that was a lot of trees.
That's a lot of trees.
Yeah, computing now.
Especially if you made this bigger. I believe if I increase the size of this now and I hit resim, it's gonna start to populate this. So we can start to see how procedural content can be quite handy. If I play around with this a bit more and hit resim, now it's just taking over my world. I'm starting to lag out a bit. Let me bring that back down. Okay. And let's play with that area for now. Now, I believe the way to decrease the sim is if we open up our static mesh foliage actor that we created earlier and go into the shade radius under collision. Now this is a test, and then hit resim. Okay, starting to reduce. No, it's increasing the the collision radius. I guess I might have to increase that. Oh no, we can decrease that. Getting into low numbers. Probably not the best tree asset we could have imported, but because it imports at a huge scale, if you actually open this tree up, it's humongous. So I would recommend playing with the scale first of this before we move on to anything. But let's say we've already adjusted that. I believe it was in the seed, or we can play around with, because we don't have the foliage asset stuff here. What happens if we decrease the random seed tile size? Nope. No. Humongous tree. Let me just bring it in by itself and see what we can play with this. Build settings. Can I change the build settings? Build scale. Let's go for 0.2, 0.2, 0.2. Okay, cool. Let's work with that. Let's see if that's a difference. Yay. Okay, let's bring it down a bit more. So how to do that? Sorry, guys. If we go into your static mesh object and you open that up, the tree we brought in from Fab, if you go under build settings, under LOD build settings, you have build scale. Now, what you can do obviously is you can export this to your other 3D software that you use and re-import it back in at the proper scale if you want, and reapply the textures, or you can just manipulate it from the default build scale here. I'm gonna go for a 0.1 for this one because it's extremely large. And once you're happy with that, hit apply, and that should decrease. There we go, looking much better. That should decrease the build size of your trees. Now if I go back to my spawner and resimulate that, cool, yay, there we go, we got something better, looking like a forest finally. Whee! Okay, so what I did there is I just brought everything back to default for now. 100 collision, 100 shade radius. Haven't changed anything other than the scale of the tree from the build settings, and I hit resimulate, and now we have something a bit more proper. Let me know if you guys are happy with that. I've got any questions. Scale that a bit more.
Sorry, which values was it again? Could you put the thing like modified options just to see?
Yeah. Which item was it that you changed the options on?
For the scale of the trees?
No, for the tree asset. So like the one that's being used by the procedural system.
This one here. Static mesh.
Not the mesh itself, but the foliage actor. Yeah. So is this it?
That's all default.
It's the second one. So
Yeah,
not this tab, but the next tab. That one exactly. Which values were modified here?
collision.
Procedural collision radius and shade radius collision.
Okay. Let's see. So let's see. There we go. Collision radius and shade radius, you said? So what were the values there?
Back to default, 100, 100, 100.
Oh, 100.
Yeah.
Back to default. And then
I also just kept it at the default. What was it? Collision radius, shade radius, and changed the static mesh to the same scale you use. And there's still a lot of, I think it's Z fighting between the leaves.
There's a lot of trees for me as well.
Yeah, definitely will be. Yeah, it's still pretty dense. It's still pretty dense for the amount that it is. But yeah, we'll play around a lot more with the settings in the next ones for sure. We'll deep dive more into this procedural stuff.
You know the little cog thing lets you show only modified properties. Can I just see what yours are? On this exact asset that you're on right now.
I haven't changed. I only left everything default. To be honest, don't know why these come up, but I haven't changed these at all.
Yeah, because I think I might have changed some things that maybe are not helping. Let's see things.
Which what are you looking at there? Is it more dense or not scaled right?
It seems really dense. Or no, maybe not.
On your screen, it looks like there's a bit more gaps in between some areas. Mine's like wall to wall.
Exactly,
perfectly dense.
Same.
Did you? We have all adjusted the scale here, right? 0.1.
Yes.
And we hit apply changes.
Exactly right. Yeah. What about the tree procedural thing? The one, the asset that you actually place in the scene? That's also default, yeah?
Yeah, also default. Maybe if you hit resimulate, try that.
I tried mine at scale 0.1, so 0.2, so I'm going to try 0.1 to see.
At 0.1, I get some gaps. Like when you look at the top, you can see some.
Yeah, that definitely makes a difference. Is there a method to like scale the density overall?
Yeah, I will look at that just from time's sake. We'll look at that a bit further on, dude, if that's cool.
Oh, okay,
But
no
yeah,
worries.
definitely there is the ability to change the density like we would affect it in the foliage actor there as well. I'm just not quite sure what the balance is between the simulation, and because it is a simulation at the end of the day, I want to see what the balance is between the asset that we define here, because here we also have density, fall off, and collision. So we can set the stuff that if the two trees collide, space them out, something like that. So we can play with that a little bit more in the next one. What I just quickly wanted to cover before the end of this one is, because we're gonna follow an image that has a bit more of a, well, this is not the right one, was it? This one here, because let's say we're gonna do our mountains and it's gonna flow into our river here. We don't want the procedural content. Let's say we're gonna scale this procedural content to cover this whole section, but we want to create a little gap where that river will pass through. What we can do is add a procedural. If you go to the top tool section next to the selection mode, and I think it's, if we just search, if you just go into it, there's no search, but if you just click it and then just search procedural, you can see here procedural blocking volume. You can drag and drop that into the scene and scale that as well. Let's say, where's my mouse? To the size, covering across the trees. Good enough? Yeah. Covering across all our trees, let's say a specific section in the middle. And if we go to our tree spawner and hit resimulate, I believe, hey, have a nice little gap in our trees. Whee! So just to reiterate that, we go to the plus, we search procedural, we add a procedural foliage blocking volume, we scale it to overlap our procedural spawner, and then we go back to our procedural spawner, and at the bottom under procedural foliage we hit resimulate, and that will update the simulation and it will create a blocking volume, add the volume. I guess if we wanted to scale that down just to be like in the middle of a surrounding area, let's say we just add a pond in the middle of this tree and we update that sim, it just creates blocking volume in that section.
Do you know if there's a possibility to make more like unique shapes for these volumes instead of just squares and rectangles?
$1 million question. $1 million question. If you are competent with C++, then yes.
Yeah.
So
Big yikes.
what you can do is, if you go into the Visual Studio in here where it says this brush component is a cube in C++. If you go in and you can edit it to be what you like. Unfortunately, there is no, they're making our lives difficult. There's no, you can do the more obvious shapes, I think.
Oh, bless you. So yeah, I guess we just have to layer on the cubes everywhere.
If you want to follow Unreal's, like, you can recreate what this does, right? This is code at the end of the day. So you can recreate this with a blueprint with an object of your liking, you know, if that makes sense. So this is,
so
this at the end of the day is a blueprint. This procedural foiling blocking actor is a blueprint Unreal just created for us to make our lives easier when we use it. So you can recreate this yourself with your own custom mesh, rather than it being a box, it can be whatever you want. Let's say the hill, like whatever, and you can use that as a blocking volume. But you would have to know a little bit more about the blueprint elements to take the foliage actor and subtract it and all that stuff. So you have to customize that.
All right. Well, let's see if there's a YouTube tutorial maybe or something.
Please share if you do. We'd love to know more. We'd love to know more.
Okay.
So this technique we're going to use basically into our river if we want to go for more procedural approach to our environment. Now feel free to explore, bring in some new trees, maybe some pine trees. I would recommend getting some stuff from why did I go in here? I keep forgetting it's in the Unreal Editor. There's some amazing tree packs. Literally, you can get some nice pine trees and update these meshes and really populate your scene, especially in the foreground and some in the background, to make it look nice. Grass, I would say, focus more on the foreground than the background if you want to play around with it a little bit more. But I guess we want to start building on this a little bit more in your own free time as well if you want, guys. So feel free, whether you want to do it procedurally or using the foliage approach. We showed both methods. I wouldn't recommend using the procedural approach for grass. It's not recommended just because the amount of shaders and stuff it will compile. So you try and use the procedural method for trees only, or use the foliage method for trees and grass as well. Now, I'm going to leave you all with a quick tip for our more advanced users. Unreal Engine have started to build, if you guys download any sort of landscape assets, so I downloaded this one, let's say, this is where I got this scene from. If you download, you can look how to make it from scratch, but I recommend having a gander of one of these projects. I can share some of this stuff as well. MW Auto Landscape Material. I'm sharing that in the chat. I can just do that actually. I'm sorry to keep you guys longer than 7. This will be brief. And what this does in here, obviously, you can see it's randomly put in some rocks, some grass patches. These are not rocks that I have put. This is generated by the landscape material. And it's pretty sick because you can define stuff like, okay, if I've got a sharp cut through in my landscape and it's not smooth, it's going to be a rock and snow. If it's lower than this level and it's nice and smooth and it's flat, it's going to be grass. And it's quite sick how these landscape materials are created. I'll have a quick look just to show you guys what it can do. I've disabled it for this tutorial so we can do a bit of grass, but essentially if I wanted to, where is it? Dirt, grass, here I've disabled it. But if I go and zoom in and I enable grass procedurals and grass advance, you can start to see now, boom, just like that. Automatically it's found patches where there's no rocks and it's just put grass for me. And obviously it's not going to put it on higher up surfaces. It knows there to put snow. And the best thing is if I actually start sculpting this stuff, ooh, it's a huge brush size, you can start to see the landscapes change, right? Now this is pretty freaking insane. Now I won't deep dive, unless we really want to, and there's demand, we can start to look at building our own custom landscape material. But honestly, there are huge amount of assets you can just get started already on Fab, or feel free to look at some tutorial videos as well. Literally there is, if you search landscape material, I believe you start. Again, if you want to pay for stuff, there's more advanced stuff, but there is a huge amount of free stuff out there as well. This is pretty sick. So yeah, this is another way to do grass. It's more efficient and also procedural at the same time. But obviously it doesn't give you a lot of flexibility, right? So I don't know if this is once I painted. Yeah, this is once I painted. But it doesn't give you a lot of manual flexibility. So if you wanted to place a specific tree in a specific location, you would then have to use the foliage actor stuff as well on top of it as a layer. So this is nice for a base layer, and then use the foliage actor stuff as a secondary layer. Groovy.
Awesome, man. Very cool.
Any questions, thoughts?
Oh yeah.
Feelings?
We have one more. For the foliage painter, is that brush size the only? Oh no, the brush shape, is that the only shape?
You
We're all
love your
about those
shapes,
shapes.
Kat, don't you? The foliage
Yeah.
here, the shape, yeah. Yeah, which is
It's only circle.
it's only circle, but you can do. I think does it have it like the?
There's a fall off or something, maybe.
I thought
No.
there was that was the landscape. I thought they had it in.
Yeah, I know landscape has a lot of different shapes. You can make your own alpha brush, right?
Yes.
For
Yeah,
landscape.
yeah, you can, yeah. Not so much for foliage. No.
I guess you do the single placement after.
Yeah, fine tuning with single placement. I'd recommend.
Ask.
Also, now that I looked at this, these are filters that you can paint on. So if you don't want to paint on, if you have static meshes in your environment and stuff, or other assets, you can choose only to paint on landscape, which is pretty cool. Or static meshes only if you want to do.
That's nice.
If I want to paint like this side plant A and this side plant B.
Oh, you just unselect. Oh yeah. If you want to paint only specific plants.
Yes, deselect them from your foliage viewer here.
If I turn on the first one, that on that brush, it will affect that one stroke.
Yeah, it'll only paint that one plant.
And then the next stroke, if I take another plant, then it will affect on that stroke.
Yeah, so if you only select one, you have to check it. And if it's checked, then those plants will be included in the brush.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Petros.
Yeah.
Go to the procedural tree asset. Not the procedural one, but the tree asset that the procedural is using.
Honor?
This one. Yeah. You go to the fall off curve. Do you have fall off curve there?
Yeah.
Yeah, literally just set that little value there to 0.1 instead of 1. And then just take the use fall off curve thing. Do you see? It's just above, yeah. And then, resimulate. And then you can affect it pretty dramatically. Obviously, you can adjust it more, but I didn't realize that value had it. But then I think you can also basically select both minimum and maximum with that, which is nice. It's quite dynamic.
But then what's the fall off curve doing? Is it based off height or something?
I think it's normalized distance from each other and the density factor. So how far from each other should they be, and how many of them would there be at that distance, basically. Okay. So you see they're putting them in little clusters.
Yeah.
So it's like that's how many would be in that cluster versus another cluster.
Yeah. So you've got the number of clusters at the bottom as well. So if you do cluster steps and you set it to 1, it would just basically be like the single foliage actor thing. But if you increase the steps of the clustering, like Milo said, and then you hit resim, it will create more and more of those variations in that one section.
Also, is there a max size you can have for this spawner box? like a size where it just won't compute anymore?
That's probably according to your GPU threshold, I'd say. I would not want to experiment with that kind of stuff. If you like your GPU and you want it to survive for a couple more years, proceed with caution, especially with
So it's
foliage.
better to do multiple boxes, like the spawning box next to each other.
For sure, you could play with like like I said, don't do it with grass. Do it more trees. If you want to do multiple, the variations will apply here, right? So if you have more trees that you want to add, you just add all of them here, and now this this spawner will just have a variation of all these trees that you have. Now, like
so then
I said,
the fall of sorry.
Yeah, go on.
Oh no, I was gonna say then the fall off curve would just randomly pick trees. It's not going to apply that fall off curve to every tree and overlap them.
It will apply it as a whole. So anything oh, sorry, it's not in here. Yeah. So each of them will be individual for that sake. Yeah. But then they're handled by the fall off here, right? So you can set the random seed, the tile size, and all that stuff as well to match it.
Okay. And the LEDs are still working too then?
Yeah, but I would highly recommend using, obviously this is an asset we just got quickly because it was easy to download, it was small in size. But if you look at more trees from Epic or Fab's marketplace that are slightly more optimized, like our grass we used, then you're gonna have much smoother results for sure. This culling now, you see some random glitchiness and stuff like that, because we haven't set it up like properly. It wasn't well, I guess it wasn't the part of that tutorial to set it up properly, but if we want to look into that as well, we can at another session for sure.
All right.
But this procedural stuff, you can use this for literally anything. Doesn't have to be foliage. Foliage is just a term they use. You can have freaking Lego boxes there, or just boxes. It will still apply.
Oh yeah, you can do it with rocks is another common one, right?
Yeah, you can do all sorts. Yeah, anything. And well, I say anything. Probably not everything, but again, proceed with caution. Anything that has highly optimized. Don't do that with cars, for instance. High poly cars. You got like 20 million polys just rendering straight away. More than that. Alrighty. I'm gonna cut the streaming there.